Please stand. My brothers and sisters, we listen attentively to the good news as recorded by John. John the Baptist was standing with two of his disciples, and as he watched Jesus walk by, he said, "Behold, the Lamb of God." The two disciples heard what he said, and they followed Jesus. Jesus turned, saw them following him, and said to them, "What are you looking for?" They said to him, "Rabbi," which means teacher, "where are you staying?" Jesus said to them, "Come and you will see." So they went and saw where Jesus was staying, and they stayed with him that day. It was about 4 p.m. Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, was one of the two who heard John and followed Jesus. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which is translated Christ. Then he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, the son of John. You will be called Cephas," which is translated Peter. The gospel of Christ. Praise be to you, O Christ. Please be seated. Yesterday we were in the south shore of Long Island, and I think we found what has got to be Target's largest store in all of creation. This thing was literally the size of a football field. The aisles had aisles. It was just incredible. And by the time you made one round, you really needed to stop for refreshments. I mean, it was that large. As we're walking along, I noticed that there are two girls standing in the middle of the aisle, and one asked the other, "What is it that you're looking for? What is it that we need to buy?" And she said, "Nothing, And then the other one said to the other, "Well, okay, what are we here for? What do you need to buy?" And she said, "Nothing." And so they're standing in the middle of the store, and then they decided, well, okay, let's just walk up and down the aisles. And so they just wandered off. I think in a lot of ways, that's sort of the way it is with God. I don't think we always need to have a reason to be going to God. I know most of the time we're taught to pray that when we have struggles and challenges and difficulties, we bring them to God and we ask God to intercede, and rightfully so. But our relationship can't just be based on what you can get out of the other person. There has to be the opportunity simply to be and to be present. When John the Baptist, very clearly inspired by God, already knows from the inside of his spirit, because of a relationship he already has with the Father, that he recognizes Jesus as the Lamb and says to his disciples, "Here is the one, the Lamb of God. Here is the one I have been talking about." He is so clear about that he allows two of his disciples to leave and to follow Jesus. Now, Jesus, interesting, right? Senses two people following him, and he turns and he says, "What are you looking for?" Notice they never respond. They never respond. They don't say. Because I'm not sure they know, or do we know. I think it's a very human experience of God. What are you looking for? We really don't know. We have a sense, we'd like to have a relationship with God that brings us some sense of peace and purpose and fulfillment. We'd like to know that we're not alone. We'd like to know that in our struggles and in our desperation, God is there right by our side, walking and probably at times carrying us through those moments. That is fundamental. But notice that the disciples can't even answer the question. What do they ask instead? They simply say, where are you staying? Because for those disciples, they simply wanted to be with Jesus. And I think a lot of times in our Christian tradition and in our Christian journey, we forget about the value of simply being present with Jesus. just allowing ourselves to be in his presence and to allow ourselves to abide, to live, to spend time in his house just for the sake of being there. They're there for a period of time, and then notice, just being with Jesus, just being in his presence, already tells them that this is the one. He is the Messiah. He is the Christ. And they go off and they get their brothers. And they bring their brothers and they present them to Jesus. And Jesus immediately and instantaneously accepts them as part of his disciples. But recognize the question is never answered by the disciples. And also that their simplicity was just that they wanted to be in his presence. And I think for most of us, we sort of feel that to be in relationship with God, there's something we need or should or required to be doing. And the reality of the Gospels, time and time again, doesn't indicate that anyone has the right answer to that question, what is it that you're looking for? And it doesn't seem to matter to Jesus. When they say, Master, where are you staying? He could have turned and said, well, wait a minute, I asked you a question. Answer my question first. But that's not the point. The point's not about getting an answer about what it is that they're looking for, because God already knows who we are and what we are. That's the intriguing thing that I find time and time again in our faith journey. Somehow when we stumble across or decide to be in a relationship with God, we feel that we have to control the conversation and we sort of have to fill God in on all the stuff that we're up to. All the good stuff, all the bad stuff, all the struggles, all the challenges, all the happiness, all the joys. Somehow we feel that God doesn't already know these things. When the disciples don't answer the question of what is it that you are looking for, it doesn't matter to Jesus, because what they have chosen is the better part. They want to simply know where is he staying. They want to be in his presence. And I think more often than not, when we actually convince ourselves and make the time to be in God's presence, we always feel somehow that we should be answering the question of what is it that you're looking for. We always feel that we need to do that. And here you have two disciples who just are honest and say, we don't know. We just don't know. We just want to be with you. The two girls in Target, they didn't have a purpose. They didn't know what they were going to buy. They didn't know what they were going after. What was important for the two girls was that they were with each other because they were friends. And they probably had an amazing exercise experience walking up and down those aisles. They probably lost about 4 pounds just making the rounds, and then on the way out, regrettably, Starbucks was closed. And that was that. But for them, it was simply about being together. And if there's anything I sense that we're missing the most of, it's simply being with another person. My wife and I, we were talking about this last night. When I ask us to be in relationship with God, and when I ask us to engage in a relationship, I never really thought about, and it didn't occur to me until this week, that we all really suck at relationships. I never understood, and it never captured my thought to even consider that inviting us to be in relationship with God might be the biggest challenge that we have, not because it's a relationship with God, but just that it's a relationship. And so many of us are not really very well tuned or trained or experienced in what a relationship is. We have all different types of relationships, those that have built us up and many, many that have hurt and brought us down. And here you have a minister who is asking us to be in relationship. And the point might be is that we just really don't know what that is. And so we try to do our relationship. We try to have our relationship with God like we have our relationship with people in ordinary life. But most of the time that is driven by an ultimatum, a desire, something we want in return for the relationship. Even if we're friends, even if people are friends, we're basically in friendship because there's a loneliness that's part of our life that needs to be filled. There's something that's being satisfied by having this relationship with another person. And that's why I think the wonder of this passage is exactly the starting point of where we should be in our relationship with God. If we go and we say to God, and maybe this is the way we start our relationship, maybe this is the first step with a relationship with God. Maybe we say to God, you know, where are you staying? And we know and can, in the depths of our souls, we can resonate the words that Jesus said to these disciples, just come and see. Come and see. There is a requirement then in that relationship. They are being invited to come and participate and to be with Jesus for the day, for moment after moment, and to be in his presence and to recognize that we are in those disciples and we are in his presence. We're responding to an invitation. We have to come. And Jesus makes it clear that we're going to see. Jesus makes it clear that we're going to experience and see something that we've never seen before, or that will be proper to our relationship with Jesus. And I'm not sure, even as a people of faith, that we are convinced that when we ask where Jesus is and where he is staying, that Jesus is inviting us in the first place. Because we're carrying a ton of baggage that ends up telling us that in every other relationship, I don't work out, so this isn't going to work out. This is going to be a lot worse. I'm going to leave this alone. You know, I don't know if I could come, but all right, I'll put one foot in front of another and we'll start coming. But then the ultimatum, the ultimate point, rather, that Jesus is trying to make clear to these disciples is when they engage, when they follow, they will see. There will be an experience. They should expect an experience of being in the presence of Jesus and what that does to their reality, to their worldview, and to the very depths of themselves. And I think we might be very good at coming, but we might not be really good at believing that we're actually going to see. That we're really not going to see, because we maybe don't believe that this Jesus is as present now in his resurrected self as he was when he walked the face of the earth. And I think this is clouded because you and I live in a world that is filled with struggles and pain and suffering. But you know, the thing that sort of ran through my mind this week is that even when Jesus was walking the face of the earth, not every single sick person was healed. Not every single murderer stopped killing. Not every single thief stopped stealing. And how do we know that? Barabbas is set free. A murderer. The two who are crucified with Jesus. This is all during the time that the physical, divine, and human experience of God incarnate is walking the face of the earth. And when we experience this in our world, we say to ourselves, how is it possible that this can be true? That God is real, that Jesus is real, that we're invited into a relationship. And I would simply say we have to come and we have to be looking for that reality to become clear to us. That it is Jesus who's saying that by following, you will see. It's the Master himself who is declaring this. It is God himself who is saying that if you come, you will see. But do we believe it? In the end, you know, these disciples ended up following Jesus, and they were so convinced by just a short period of time of being in his presence that they went and they got their brothers and they brought them so that they too. And what is their proclamation? We have found the Messiah, the Christ. And if you're wondering why John's gospel says that, it's because John is writing for Greeks. And so they may not understand Jewish language. So when John says, when John writes that we have found the Messiah, he needs to translate because their audience might not understand exactly what it is that they're talking about. But once the Greek population and audience hears this, they understand who this Jesus is. And I'm wondering if we need to have that term Christ translated again, transliterated again for us today. Do we really understand who we are in relationship with? Because if we pause just for a moment, and trying to gain clarity around who is this Jesus that we are following, if we just looked closer, just for one instant, our lives too would be transformed. Our lives too would be transformed, and we would not want to leave, just as these disciples did not. We would not want to leave the presence of Jesus Christ. God bless you.